The greatest player to ever play this game is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
LeBron already to go. What you talking about? He's closer. LeBron to go.
No, he's not.
Yes, he is.
No, he's not. No, he's not.
Flip that around. Flip that around.
Go ahead.
Is Patrick Mahomes closer to Tom Brady or is Michael Jordan closer to Goat Jay?
That is a blasphemous question. That is a blasphemous.
The numbers are outstanding. He's rewriting the individual record book. But when you talk about the winning, he didn't win close to as much as
So nobody is shocked that I have Jordan behind LeBron. You can make a legitimate argument for three guys as the GOAT. LeBron, MJ, and Kareem.
Here's my take on the NBA's greatest player of all time. The debate for first place is heavily divided, and as far as Twitter goes, it's reached toxic psycho status. But 99%, if not 100% of NBA fans will agree that the three players with the best GOAT case are Michael Jordan, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and LeBron James. In this video, I'm going to take the careers of these three guys and run them through a point-based system of categories. I believe these charts will reveal the answer to the question, who is the GOAT? Starting with the stats category. Looking at basic stats in the regular season first, you see that LeBron leads the majority of the stats. Looking at basic stats in the playoffs, you see that LeBron leads. Looking at advanced stats in the regular season, it's actually a three-way tie. And last, advanced stats in the playoffs, LeBron comes in first once again. But there's more to this than just a head count of career averages. There's a lot of nuanced points people raise with these stats, so let's talk about some of them. When it comes to the shooting percentages from 2 and from 3, here's the two biggest complaints I hear. People say you can't use 2-point percentage because it makes layup merchants look better than real shooters. Responding to this, it doesn't matter, quite frankly. If you want to divide 2-point shots into subsections by distance, go for it. But all of these shots are worth 2 points, and the metric I'm using is percentage on shots worth 2 points. If anything, the so-called layup merchant is the smarter player because he's choosing to take the shot that he has a higher percentage of making. The point of the game is to get buckets and win, not to look cool. That's why players like AI and Kyrie and Melo are not in this conversation. People also say you can't use 3-point percentage because the 3 wasn't valued equally between the eras. Responding to this, again, this is irrelevant. The question is not who cared about the 3-point shot the most. The question is who shot threes the best? And we have a crystal clear answer. The guy who shoots threes at the highest percentage and volume is the best. It's that simple. Now, I'm not going to glaze a player just because he's a better 3-point shooter, but at the same time, I'm not going to just ignore 3-point shooting just because your favorite player might suck at threes. The biggest complaint I hear about looking at stats in general is that they don't tell the whole story, and this is 100% true. Look at 2017 Russell Westbrook. He won the MVP just because his stats were through the roof. But we all know the deeper context there. His usage rate and efficiency were ridiculously bad, and his team lost in a gentleman's sweep in the first round of the playoffs. But at the same time, it's important to look at the box score stats. It literally records what a player does on the court. And I never said stats tell the entire story. Stats are but one of many categories that there are to look at. Now let's talk about advanced stats for a minute. My chart includes the most relevant metrics, but to be honest, I don't value advanced stats at all. A lot of people do, and that's why I included them, but the advanced stats are extremely problematic. Hoops Hype surveyed 29 NBA executives, and 76% of them said the PER metric was garbage. 48% of them said the win shares per 48 metric can't be trusted either. It's not just salty fans who say this. NBA executives don't trust these advanced stats. And here's why they don't trust them. The metrics don't work. Remember when 2017 Russell Westbrook literally broke the BPM and value over replacement stats? The creators had to go in and tweak their own equations just to reshape the agenda. This is real. Look it up. And I'm just going to point out, LeBron led MJ in a lot of these advanced stats before the creators went in and tweaked them. After the formulas were quote-unquote fixed, MJ suddenly is number one in most of them. I'm just saying, that seems kind of sus to me. So LeBron ends up winning the stats category. Moving on to the next category, defense. I just got done slandering advanced stats. But once again, I'm going to include them because they carry a lot of weight in today's analytics-driven NBA community. First of all, let's look at their career average defensive stats. It's actually really close. LeBron and MJ tie at 7, and Kareem barely edges them out with a score of 8. Looking at their career defense stats in the playoffs, LeBron has the clear advantage here. And looking at their defensive primes, this is all the seasons where these players made an all-defensive team. In these seasons, Kareem and LeBron tie with a score of 8, and MJ falls behind with a score of 5. So all the numbers tell us that LeBron and Kareem are far better than Michael as defenders. Now, if you want to ignore these numbers and just count defensive accolades, like total all-defense selections and the Defensive Player of the Year award, and even steals titles, it would seem like MJ is the best defender of the three. But there's a few problems with this in context. First, all defense selections are limited to eras and positions. MJ having all of his all-defense selections simply means he was better than the other guards in his era. It doesn't prove that he was better than a forward or a center who played in different eras. And second, the Defensive Player of the Year award didn't exist for half of Kareem's career. Also, Tim Duncan never won the award, but he's objectively better than Michael Jordan as a defender. And on top of that, everyone knows that in 2013, first-team all-defense LeBron got snubbed of the award by Marc Gasol, a guy who only made second-team all-defense by a technicality. So the Defensive Player of the Year award is clearly just a Mickey award altogether. Michael simply falls short as a defender compared to LeBron and Kareem. In addition to the charts that prove this, look at this one. This is Michael's first-team all-defense seasons compared to just the career averages of LeBron and Kareem. Even giving Michael this advantage, he still can't win the category. At best, he ties LeBron and still loses to Kareem. Now, some of you might be thinking it's unnecessary for me to explain why a skinny shooting guard does not stack up defensively to a 6'9", 260-pound super athlete or a 7-foot freak of nature. But you'd be surprised. There are people out there who believe Michael Jordan is the greatest defender of all time just because he won a Defensive Player of the Year. So to sum it up, LeBron ends up winning the defense category. Looking now at the next category, accolades, starting with accolades in the regular season. This is extremely close. Kareem and Michael tie at 10, and LeBron barely loses with a score of 9. Looking at playoff accolades, this chart is not close at all. LeBron is by far the best in this regard. Having said that, most casual fans only care about rings and finals MVPs. So if that's all you want to look at, the chart would completely flip. MJ would be first, and LeBron would fall to last of the three. Looking now at miscellaneous accolades, these are accolades that I find to be very important because they put things into full perspective and context. If you only look at a player's MVPs and ring totals, you won't get the full picture. These neglected accolades embody a player's consistency at the top of the league. Now, when it comes to these miscellaneous accolades, LeBron wins by a landslide. A lot of MJ fans won't like this chart, but I think context is important, and if they want to ignore context, that's them. Just one example. Look at the top 5 bricks and the brick title section of the chart. Michael's Twitter cult will talk all day about his 10 scoring titles, but they don't tell you that Michael had to lead the NBA in bricks for half of his career in order to win those scoring titles. This is the context that I value. It puts all of these players into the proper perspective. And in this regard, legends like Michael Jordan get overrated, while less popular legends like Kareem and Tim Duncan are underappreciated. So to sum up this category, LeBron wins the accolades category. On to the next category, peaks. I'm going to look at 3 levels. The player's unspecified peak, which is just the general time in which they were most successful in the league. Then their 3-year peak specifically, and then their single season peak. Starting with unspecified peaks. This is yet another really close comparison. Kareem comes out on top, but I wouldn't argue with you if you gave this chart to Michael, because he did not play in the 1994 season. So his accomplishments you see here were basically earned in 7 seasons, compared to 9 for LeBron and 10 for Kareem. For the peaks category, I chose to combine basic stats into one item on the chart, same with advanced stats. I feel like it would be disingenuous to only give Michael 2 points for the rings, while LeBron would have got 6 points for all of the stats that he leads in. Combining the stats into one item makes the chart much more accurate. Looking now at 3-year peaks, this is probably the worst category for Kareem. MJ easily takes the win here. Looking now at single season peak, in my opinion, the most important peak that there is. It's like putting all your cards on the table and saying, my absolute best versus your absolute best. Now, I apologize for the small font and cramming all of this onto one screen, but I'm trying to be as inclusive as possible, looking at every single thing that these players did in their greatest individual seasons. Taking everything into consideration, LeBron proves to have the greatest single season peak. There's a couple noteworthy things. You see the numbers in parentheses on things like MVP and All-NBA selections. Here's the context behind that. We could be simplistic and say, meh, all 3 of them won the award and the finals MVP, but that's disingenuous. For example, look at the MVPs. LeBron won his MVP with .998 of a share. He was 1 vote shy of being a unanimous MVP. Then you have Kareem, who only got .665 of a share. So LeBron won his MVP more convincingly. Therefore, he has the better MVP. Aside from stuff like that, you can pause and scroll through everything. It's amazing how much these players did in their greatest single seasons. Even the player who accomplished the least of these 3 still accomplished more than most Hall of Famers do in their entire career. On to the next category, eras. Now, if you're expecting me to argue that one era is better than the other 2, you're going to be disappointed. The selling point of my case, I hope at least, is that I'm not throwing my opinion into the mix. All I want to do is look at the facts and the objective data and statistics. So I'm going to call LeBron, MJ, and Kareem's era a tie. Because they're so similar statistically, it really becomes silly to think one is perfect and another is garbage by comparison. And sadly, this is what drives most of the debate on Twitter today. The funny thing is, when people argue which era is the best, they're all correct to a degree. For example, LeBron fans say that their era is the best because it's the most skilled, and that's true. This is clearly indicated by the true shooting percentage, 3-point percentage, and free throw percentage. We just have better, more skilled shooters today. Another example, MJ fans say their era is the best because it was a much rougher and physical league. This is also true. This is clearly indicated by the fouls per game and the free throws attempted per game. Kareem and Michael's eras had way more foul calls and free throws. This is indicative of a more physical era. LeBron fans say their era is the best because Kareem and Michael's eras were plagued and diluted by expansion. Again, this is true, but does it really change anything? Not really. Ultimately, the era argument cannot be used to favor any one of these players. It's not that they're better or worse, they're just different in a couple of ways. And more importantly, every NBA legend could adjust to any era, if they would even need to. Kareem would not have to change at all. A shooter like Michael could improve his 3-point shooting, and a 6'9", 260-pound LeBron James, who already plays bully ball primarily, could easily adjust to a more physical league. Moving on to the next category, longevity. Contrary to what the likes of Chris Broussard will tell you, yes, longevity actually does play a role in the GOAT debate. We're trying to answer the question of who the greatest player of all time is, and a player's ability to prolong his greatness is a priori relevant to the question. You can pause and take in this chart. I'm not even going to talk about it. This is clearly LeBron's category. Oh, and one more thing. There's a popular myth out there that LeBron only has better longevity counting stats than Michael because he's played longer. That's false. LeBron actually passed Michael in most counting stats in fewer games and fewer shots. Now, Jordan fans might respond to this by saying, oh yeah, well, MJ won more rings in fewer seasons. Well, that's true, but that perfectly segues into the next category, teammates and competition. There is a big mistake that fans make when arguing sports. This is probably the biggest fallacy I'm going to talk about in this entire video. I call it the Michael Jordan-Tom Brady effect. The Michael Jordan-Tom Brady effect is when you wrongly give one player all of the credit for something that can only be accomplished by a team. The biggest example of this would be championships or rings. Just one quick example of this before we get into the numbers and data. Look at Michael Jordan from 1985 to 1998. From 85 to 87, Michael couldn't get past the first round. From 88 to 98, he became a true contender, and he won a ton of championships in this 10-year span. But Michael Jordan never changed. He was the same 30-plus points per game, around 5 to 6 rebounds and assists, around 50% shooting guy. He was always the same. Michael never changed. His team around him did. From 85 to 87, he did not have Scottie Pippen or Phil Jackson. When he got those guys, plus other key players, he immediately found more success. I'm not saying Michael needed to be carried by these guys, but clearly, a player's success depends on more than just him. Who Michael Jordan played with and who he played against were a huge role in his success. Same goes for LeBron and Kareem and any player in any sport. So let's look at what the data tells us. Looking at all of the facts, it's not even close. Michael Jordan proves to have the easiest career when it comes to strength of teammates and weakness of opponents. Kareem's career was slightly more difficult. LeBron's is far and away the toughest. Now, LeBron haters often try to paint the complete opposite picture. They say LeBron has had far more star teammates than Michael ever had. This is simply false. LeBron's teammates like Russell Westbrook, Melo, Derrick Rose, Shaq, Dwight Howard, and even Ray Allen were far, far past their primes by the time they played with LeBron. That's why this anti-LeBron narrative is not remotely indicated by the All-NBA and All-Defense teammate sections at the top of my chart. Summing up teammates and opponents, LeBron gets a big win in this category. Looking now at the clutch category. Now, the biggest problem with this chart is that we don't have all of the data for Kareem. But since he had far less total clutch makes than Michael and LeBron, I think we can still fairly grade the chart. Like many of the comparisons so far, the data gives us a very close call. Michael Jordan just barely edges out LeBron as the most clutch player. Some of you might be wondering why I didn't factor in LeBron's meltdown versus Dallas in 2011. But that actually is factored into this chart. In the last category, points per game ratio of the regular season to the finals, LeBron's 2007 and 2011 finals cost him big in this category, potentially costing him the point. But let's talk about it real quick anyway. The 2011 finals is blown out of proportion. LeBron averaged 18, 7, and 7 on 48% in a 6-game series. Kobe Bryant, the defending champion at the time, put up a worse stat line of 23, 3, and 3 on 46% and got swept by the Mavericks. No one gives Kobe any flack. Dallas also beat prime Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook in a gentleman's sweep in the conference finals. No one cares about that either. Second of all, LeBron's 2011 stat line is better than this host of finals MVPs. LeBron's worst playoff series is better than many legends' best finals series. Think about that. And third, we could nitpick Michael and Kareem the exact same way. What about 1989 versus Detroit when Michael played 46 minutes, but he only shot the ball 8 times for a total of 8 field goal points in a pivotal game in the series? What about 1993 versus the Knicks when Michael shot 17% from the floor, 3 for 18? He pulled a James Harden, getting 16 of his 22 points at the free throw line. And what about any of the 13 times that Kareem scored 8 points or less in a playoff game? 5 of those games were in the finals. You can slander any player. At some point, the data, statistics, and facts have to outweigh the emotion-driven narratives and agendas. So that's it. Every possible relevant category. So let's see who won each category. So there you have it. When you look at every facet of the game of basketball, LeBron James wins the vast majority of the categories, and Kareem proves to be the second greatest player of all time. Michael Jordan, despite his popularity and nostalgia, lands at number 3. But maybe you think there's a better way to evaluate the GOAT debate. If so, I'd love to hear it in the comments. Until then, the kid from Akron is the greatest of all time.
Coming to the end of the third quarter. LeBron James, a shot at history.